Welcome everybody. So in this video, we are going to talk about some better ways to deal with strings in JavaScript. And you'll notice I've got the code from the last video up here. It's a program that does something very simple. It prints a line to the console, it prompts the user for their name, and then it prints out the user's name back to the console. And just as a reminder, the way you execute these little JavaScript programs is you save everything from Visual Studio. I've already saved it, so I don't need to. And then you open up Chrome, and you go File, Open File, and you navigate to the place where you're saving all of your web development code and HTML and CSS and everything like that. You'll always open index.html. The HTML is sort of like the controlling document. The CSS and JavaScript are loaded by the HTML, and so they're sort of a part of it. And if you remember, it's going to prompt me for my name, and it is going to print it to the console, which I have to get to by hitting either the F12 key or holding down the Fn key and hitting F12, and I get the little Chrome developer tools over here. You may have to click over to the console. Mine was already on the console, and it does what we expect it to. But there's a problem. It doesn't look very good to print these two things on separate lines. And so that's what we're going to talk about today as a way to format strings a little bit more nicely. And you'll notice the reason it's printing it on two separate lines is because we're using two separate console.log lines. And what we want to do is get this all on one line. So we got a couple of different ways we can do that. The first way to do it is really simple. We can use something called string concatenation, where we use the plus operator, which you would usually think of as addition, to just combine two things together. So what we want to print is the user is, and then we can just put a plus in here, and we can put username. And JavaScript is smart enough to know that we've got two strings here. And so it knows that when you use the plus and you've got two strings on either side of it, it's not going to try and add them together like they're numbers. It's going to try and concatenate them, which means just stick them together end to end. So I'm going to save this. Actually, I'm going to save, I don't need to save all. I'm going to go back to Google Chrome and I'm going to hit reload. I'm going to type in my name again. And you'll notice, so the first time it does it the old way because I left that code in there. And then the second time, it puts it all on one line. But it's not formatted very well because I didn't pay attention to what I was concatenating very closely. So if I go back to Visual Studio Code, you'll notice there's no space in here. It just says the user is : and then it has username. And I certainly didn't start my name by typing a space. So in Google Chrome, in the console, it doesn't look very good. Now in the console, that's not like a user-facing part of the Chrome environment. But if we were going to put this on our web page or something like that, that's not how we want it to look. So either I can just put a space in there, or I can concatenate a space in there. Now you might say, what's the difference? There really isn't one. The difference is, what I want to show you is that you can concatenate an arbitrary number of variables together, or an arbitrary number of strings. Sorry, concatenations for strings. You can concatenate an arbitrary number of strings together, just like you can add an arbitrary number of numbers, right? I can say 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6 plus 7, right? You don't just have to add two numbers together. So when I save this, we'll do it with the concatenation method. I go back to Chrome, I reload it, I put in my true and accurate name, and it gives me a little space there so it looks a little bit nicer. So that's pretty straightforward. And string concatenation is a very, very easy way of getting these things out there. But there's another way to do it that looks a little bit nicer. This is a newer feature to JavaScript. And it's a method called variable interpolation, where you have a string and you have a little placeholder inside of the string that you replace with the variable. And so the way to do that is to say console.log, and you are going to use a backtick. A backtick is to the left of your 1 key. It's under the tilde, the little squiggly line. And some of you may have a keyboard that doesn't have it. You may have to hit a modifier key to get it. If you can't find it on your keyboard, it should be there. You can copy and paste it from the internet. But I have to use backticks to do string interpolation. And I can say the user is, and then I do a $, a curly brace, and then and you'll notice it starts to format it a little bit differently, and then the name of the variable I want to put in there, and then a closing backtick. That's not a backtick. See, I didn't find it on my keyboard, and then a closing parenthesis. And this is called string interpolation. And remember, you got to use backticks, and the format is $, curly brace, and then the name of the variable you want to pop in there inside of the curly braces. So I'm going to save all of this, and I'm going to let you think in your head. I'm going to let you think in your head what it is going to look like while I am trying to load it. And it looks the exact same with the one caveat that I forgot to include a colon because I was not paying as close attention as I should. These little formatting errors are really easy to make. They're really easy to catch. So we're going to save all. We're going to do it again in Google Chrome, not in Safari. I'm going to reload it. And it prints exactly the same, right? So these two, get out of here, Safari. These two lines will give you the exact same output. So you might say, what's the difference? Well, in cases like this, there really isn't. It's just a matter of preference. But if I wanted to interpolate a lot of variables in here, this variable interpolation format is a lot easier to use than having to write all the pluses, having to figure out where it goes. So if I've got a long string where I'm including multiple variables, this way is going to be easier. So that's pretty straightforward, right? This is a way of getting variables inside of strings so that we can print stuff out a little bit more nicely. So what I would like you to do as a skills check for this video, and you can modify your old code if you want to, or you can start a brand new JavaScript, is I want you to ask the user a couple of things about themselves. Ask them at least 3 or 4 things about themselves, and then print all of those out to the console in a single string that interpolates all of those responses into it, right? So you can have a couple of sentences if you want, you can have a paragraph, but what I want you to do is have a string that is well formatted, that uses, and I keep on saying interpolate, that's sort of the broadest term for it, but you can use the pluses, concatenation, you can use interpolation, whichever you think is better or looks better. But prompt the user for 3 or 4 pieces of information about themselves, and then print that out in one string to the console using either concatenation or interpolation. And as always, if you've got any questions, if you have any problems, feel free to raise your hand and I will come take a look.